Hello and welcome. I'm Alex Turner from thebusinessdesk.com and I'll be your host for the next hour for the Great Mayoral Debate. The debate is in association with the Northern Powerhouse Partnership and we are coming live from Production Park in Wakefield. And it's so exciting to say we're coming live after a year of Zoom interviews, webinars. It's great that next to me are the two people that I will be quizzing for the next 60 minutes. I mean, Production Park itself, is a great West Yorkshire asset. And it's at the heart of the events industry, and we're looking forward to that getting back up to full speed very quickly. So we are pleased to be here, and just to start with a thank you to the staff and students who have helped put on today's event. While we can't have an in-person audience, it's great to have so many of you with us here this afternoon, and you can join in, so feel free to use the live chat function on YouTube, or if you're on Twitter joining in the debate there, use the hashtag West Yorkshire Elects. Just a word on the head-to-head format. I hosted a Mayoral hustings with Tracy, Matt and more of the other candidates last month, but we thought with a week to go before the election day, it's important to get the two frontrunners together so they can really get into detail about the key issues as they see it for the West Yorkshire Mayor who takes office after May the 6th. So, without further ado, in the red corner, we have Tracy Brabin, who's been the Labour Member of Parliament for Batley and Spen since 2016. She was born in Batley and is well known for her roles in Coronation Street and Emmerdale before she entered politics. If successful, Tracy would be the first woman mayor of a combined authority in England. And in the blue corner, we have Matt Robinson, who served as a Conservative councillor in Leeds for more than 10 years. He's currently the Shadow Resources Lead for the Conservatives, where he focuses on the council's budget and strategy. Born and raised in Leeds, Matt has worked in education and remains a school governor. Now, the format's going to be nice and simple this afternoon. Each candidate's going to have 2 minutes for an opening pitch. We're then going to move into questions, which are going to cover three themes: economic recovery and transport, skills, education and culture, and our communities and the environment. And then both candidates will then have 2 minutes for a closing statement. And if all goes well, we will finish at 2:59 and a half. So, without further ado, if I could pass over, Tracy won the coin toss, so she gets to go first with the statement. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And I was born and raised in West Yorkshire and I love our communities. And it's with enormous pride that I'm running to be your first ever Metro Mayor. So many have lost so much this year, and it's important to me to deliver a fair and just recovery from COVID. Of course, our fingers are crossed that we might be out of the worst, but we know its true impact will not be fully understood for some time, and the challenges are great. Recovery will be tough. COVID-19 comes after a decade of Tory austerity and a much longer period of underinvestment in the north. For far too long, too many decisions have been made about us, without us, behind desks in Whitehall and Westminster. Working with the excellent Labour leaders of Leeds, Bradford, Calderdale, Kirklees and Wakefield, I know West Yorkshire can come out of this crisis better and stronger than ever before, and I have a plan. It's bold, it's exciting, and I know that working with you, partners and government, we can deliver. As your mayor, I'll focus on creating jobs, better transport, revitalising towns, tackling the housing crisis, growing our green economy. The new mayor will also be responsible for holding the police to account. We know the government cut 21,000 police officers, making our streets less safe. I'm committed to recruiting 750 officers and staff. It's what our neighbourhood need, and I will deliver. I will put victims first alongside tackling the underlying causes of crime. I'll also support our police officers doing their job in often difficult and dangerous circumstances. I want the best jobs, skills, opportunities and life chances for the communities I grew up in and the people I grew up with. I'll work tirelessly on your behalf and I won't shy away from speaking truth to power where necessary. It'll be my honour to be elected as your mayor.
Perfect to the second. Matthew.
Well, thank you everybody for tuning in at home. On the 6th of May, West Yorkshire is going to elect a new mayor. Now, whether you wanted a mayor or not, whether it's the geographic footprint you wanted them to represent or not, or whether you're not convinced about what a mayor can deliver just yet, there will be a new mayor. And shouldn't that mayor focus on the people's priorities? Shouldn't that mayor be somebody who lives and works and breathes West Yorkshire and wants to see our region succeed? And that's what I want to do as your mayor. I want to make sure that we have decent local jobs and that we create new apprenticeships and that we work with business and champion business here in the region. Business isn't the enemy. Actually, business is a partner that we can help succeed and grow our region with. I want to make sure that we have new opportunity areas so that those from deprived backgrounds or low-income backgrounds actually have the opportunity to succeed, that they can learn and thrive in our region. And I want to make sure that we have opportunity for all. I've said in many articles I want to see a land of opportunity here in West Yorkshire. That's because I've spent a career involved with schools and talking about social mobility. Let's deliver social mobility here in West Yorkshire. The new mayor is also going to be in charge of policing. That means we want to see more police on our streets focusing on your priorities. That means drug crime, violent crime, knife crime. It means antisocial behaviour and speeding. It means seeing visible police on the beat out in your area. And you should know who your local copper is and how you can get in touch with them. And we need to make sure that our streets are safe so that we can have business investment in our communities, but also importantly, so that we can have communities that thrive and strive. And finally, we've got a new transport plan that's coming forward. The mayor needs to champion that transport plan and be a very, very vocal advocate for our region. We need to be delivering Northern Powerhouse Rail. We need to be making sure we're connecting communities. Far too many communities have been left out in the cold for far too long by our councils. Actually, we need to focus on those towns that have missed out. It's about regenerating high streets. It's about giving people opportunity. That's what I want to deliver as your mayor, and that's what I will deliver as your mayor.
Thank you both. Let's crack on with our first theme, economic recovery and transport. First question to Matt from Rachel Barker. How will you support businesses to grow and remain in this region?
It's a great question from Rachel, and actually what I want to do is have a mayor's business board. I want to have a board where people have a direct line into the decision makers, businesses large or small, startups or ones that have been established, where we can hear what the challenges are, we can understand just what you need to grow, just what you need in terms of employment and skills opportunities, but actually how we can bring other businesses to the region too. That means those who are in the supply chain, that means those who work with other partners. And we need to be very, very clear on that and champion business out front. And we can do that without having new taxes. What we don't need is new local taxes in this region. It will kill off the recovery, it will damage communities who've struggled so hard through COVID over the last 12 to 15 months. So we need to make sure we're out front and championing this in our region. And I've talked about opportunity areas as well, Alex. That means bringing our universities, our businesses, our schools together, looking at the skills that we need so that kids who leave education, kids who leave school, university, or do something like an apprenticeship actually have the opportunity to succeed and have careers in the region. It ain't just about skills training, it's about careers too.
And Tracy, what's your plan to support businesses?
Thank you, Rachel. I'm assuming you're a business owner yourself, and thank you for all you've done getting us through the pandemic and keeping staff employed. And of course, the furlough system has protected a number of our businesses across the region, but so many have also missed out. The self-employed, the limited companies, part of the 3 million excluded that have not had a penny of support from government since March. So I'm hoping that you're doing okay, Rachel. What's really important is that a part of this fair and just recovery from COVID must be about business, because we've seen rising unemployment. We need you, the innovators, the entrepreneurs, to flourish in order to employ those young people and also to make our high streets flourish. I'll be setting up a manufacturing task force. We've been known internationally for manufacturing. We can pivot to the green manufacturing. That's going to be really important. I'll be pressing government for our share of the Levelling Up Fund, the Shared Prosperity Fund, the COVID recovery money that we still haven't had a decision from government. It's really important that we get our fair slice of the pie. But also it's important that our research and development budgets aren't big enough. Our productivity is not where it should be. So this could actually be an opportunity to get our green economy going through working with businesses, making sure that those opportunities are there for young people. That's why I'm committed to 1,000 jobs for young people through my Green Gateway, where those young people will have an opportunity to work in green business, SMEs and co-ops and so on across the region to chime with an interest in the climate change emergency, but also to give them the skills going forward. And my digital academy will make sure that all of our young people will have the chance to learn the skills ready for the future.
Okay. But both of you mentioned another board, another force. How do you make sure that something delivers action and not just more talking or more reports and can deliver change? Tracy first.
Well, I'm certainly absolutely impatient for change, and boards are not going to be dry, they're not going to be sat around a room. We're going to be absolutely implementing my mission to make sure, for example, the high street flourishes. We have seen, haven't we, during COVID, that our high streets have actually become a destination for us when we want to go for a walk, when we want to actually meet another human being. And I've seen great work in places like Hebden Bridge, where they are tackling the behemoths of the online deliverers and delivering from click and collect locally. And there are these sorts of strategies that will help our high street, but also it's about making high streets attractive for families to linger and to spend time, making them destinations. So whether that's from art or culture happening in the high streets, whether that's from water fountains or a greener high street, it's really important that we support businesses who've done so much to get through this pandemic.
Thank you. Matt, how do you make sure your business board delivers real change quickly?
Well, I think Tracy's highlighted some of the great work that's been done through government funding to get us through COVID, and accessing that will be paramount for anybody. But what we need to do is have accountability. We need to have really high standards here and make sure that we are setting our ambition incredibly high. Because at the moment, I think we've sought to box within ourselves. We've not really pushed ourselves to go as far as we like and as far as we want. And actually a mayor needs to be somebody that wants to innovate. It's not replication or duplication or aiming to do what Manchester's done that's going to get us through this. Actually, it's innovation. It is working with businesses, working with startups. And that means the mayor needs to be out in communities, listening to business. I will be out week in, week out, when in West Yorkshire, meeting businesses, finding out what's going on, finding out what the challenges are, how can we improve it, taking that back to government, taking that to decision makers in the board in Leeds, and shining a mirror onto them and saying we need to do far more and have those high standards. And that means also working with departments like the International Trade Department, looking at how we can take West Yorkshire global, looking at how we can work not just in West Yorkshire, but in the world, and be a champion for that. And I don't think ambition's a dirty word. Actually, we should aim really, really high in this region.
Eamon has an interesting point. Andy Bounds has sent a question in. It's a very Andy Bounds question, which will come to you first, Tracy. Given central government's recent record of giving more money to places that vote Conservative, would it not be in West Yorkshire voters' interest to vote Tory?
Well, I don't know, Andy, but that's a great question, Andy. But this is fundamentally, this is about trust, isn't it? So much has been promised from this government again and again, whether that's transport for the north, whether that's on skills, whether that's the education system. We've been promised again and again. I think there's actually been 60 announcements and re-announcements about transport and not a shovel in the ground. This government is a government for the whole nation, and there will be people watching this event who want to vote Conservative, who potentially live in a community with a Labour MP. It's absolutely fundamentally wrong that they will not be able to have access to funding. And we have seen unfairly money going to wealthier communities, and we know that we have been particularly hard hit. And we need somebody who is going to make that case to government, not somebody who will be maybe told to, accept what's on the table. We need someone who is a champion. And certainly as a Member of Parliament, I've worked cross-party. I'm a collaborator. I'm determined to get the best deal for West Yorkshire, and I will work with government where needed, but also I will stand up for our community where necessary.
Do you think Andy Burnham's experiences mean the best thing is to be subservient to government?
I'm not sure subservient is the way to be a leader. I would suggest that Andy Burnham in Manchester stood up for his community, those taxi drivers, those people who work in casinos or in the nighttime economy, when they were being offered 2/3 of what was potentially offered as support funding a few months prior. And he stood up for his community, and that's what a Labour mayor will do. We will work with government. We want the best for the whole of our community. We're not going to cherry pick one community over another. We are all West Yorkshire, and we need a strong voice to work with government and to stand up for our community when necessary.
Matt, Andy Bound's underlying point in his question is that the Conservatives look after the Conservatives, which might be a benefit if you were to win the election for the region, but is that damaging your campaign at the moment with everything else that's going on?
Well, it's a great question from Andy Bounds, and following Andy Bounds on Twitter, I know that he asks these sort of provocative questions as well. If you look at just what's happened with the Levelling Up Fund, Dewsbury and Wakefield, 25 million each for those towns. We look at what that can do and the opportunity that can bring. Those are Labour councils in that area. They might have Conservative MPs now and since 2019, but it's working together that's been achieved. It's having strong voices in government, and it's having strong voices on the ground too. And with local government experience and working with our MPs, that's exactly what I want to do. Now, actually, if you look at what Labour councils have done, in Leeds we had the local centres programme designed to regenerate high streets. Labour cut it. They got rid of it. I was fighting tooth and nail, but actually we saw our local high streets miss out on funding. We've seen the discretionary grants pile up in areas where businesses have not been able to access them. And we talk about those that have missed out, and there's a conversation about taxi drivers. I've pointed out that driving instructors haven't had the money that they need. These are small businesses and they haven't had that money. They've waited 4 months for 500 quid. In the West Midlands, in Coventry, £2,000 for those driving instructors. And that's come forward very, very quickly, and it's meant that they can look after their equipment, they can look after themselves, look after their family and plan for the future. We've not seen that. That's failures of Labour councils. So we need to shine a light on that, and a mayor needs to be doing that and having that vocal position.
Tracy?
I must say I see the landscape completely differently. The Labour councils have got our community through the worst of this year. They have provided hot meals for hungry children, and that was voted against by Conservative MPs.
That was government funding.
It was.
For that. It was government funding.
They voted against it. We in Cllr and across West Yorkshire, Labour council stepped in. They stepped in delivering tech for those children that are disadvantaged. They stepped in, as Bradford did, with its own bespoke tracking and tracing when the eye-wateringly expensive governmental scheme that has gone to shareholders, it seems most of the profits, was absolutely failing our community. The Labour government, the Labour councils have stepped in where government has failed. And I'm sorry, Matt, that only recently, the last few days, we have seen this government have also changed the way that they assess free school meals children and the money that goes to schools, which means that those schools in the most deprived areas are actually now getting less funding, and they will need to be supported by Labour councils.
Thank you. Matt,
it's actually really disingenuous not to celebrate the work that Labour councils have done to keep us safe.
I think it's disingenuous to not celebrate the work that all councils have done, and all council staff and business has done, and the community's done, from everybody that's out there picking up litter to the people who are out there delivering hot meals. It's people that have stepped up, not councils every time. So let's make that distinction very clear. And if you're such a good lobbyist, where's the funding for Batley coming through here? If you're such a good lobbyist and getting the money for government and making that case for your region and redevelopment, where is that coming from? I'll tell you what, I'll be making that case for your constituency.
I would say that the vaccine rollout has been enormously
Fantastic.
Successful.
There we go.
Specifically because of our local NHS, our primary care networks, and our local volunteers. So I want to thank them for all the work that they've done to roll it out. But we are still struggling with supply. That is a national issue, and I am definitely making the case to make sure we get that consistent supply across our region. I want to celebrate all that they have done to make sure that we are keeping safe.
Alex, I've been there volunteering at vaccine centres. I was there at the first session at my local one. Whereas on the doors, it was snowing, it was raining, it was cold, it was awful. And the joy on people's faces as they were coming out from having their vaccine and the new lease of life that that's given. We need to make sure that people out there, and if you're at home, make sure you take up your appointment to go get the vaccine. Make sure you do it, because actually the safe rollout of this vaccine, the success of this vaccine, is what will help us get through and plan for the future. We need to make sure that we are doing more and looking ahead now, and that's what a mayor should be doing. You're hearing the voice of looking back, not looking forward.
If we can look ahead, if we move from short term to the very long term, and HS2, everybody's favourite transport topic. Matt, Grant Shapps is today ruled out starting HS2 from Leeds. When we spoke a month ago, you said you'd be there with a shovel to start digging in Leeds. Is Grant Shapps wrong?
I think it's what we need to do is make sure we have a conversation with the Department for Transport and start that really early on and make that case and renew making that case and speak with one voice on it. I want Grant Shapps to come up here, and if successful, he was going to be one of the first people who's on my list to come up to Leeds and make sure he's seeing the transport infrastructure across our region, not just in the city centre. The way HS2 needs to work is it needs to help connect communities, it needs to bring investment, it needs to bring jobs. And we need to make sure that we have some certainty from government that that's coming down the tracks too. But HS2 alone isn't a silver bullet for our region. Actually, the mayor needs to be making sure they're championing connected transport. They need to be making sure that we're championing a bus network, Northern Powerhouse Rail, making sure it's that last mile for people getting home. It's all well and good talking about HS2 Leeds to London, but locally there's more we can do, and that's what the mayor can deliver, and that's what I will deliver.
Okay. Tracy, how would you get HS2 started and making sure that it delivers value to the West Yorkshire region?
Well, certainly working with the Labour leaders across the region, we're all pulling in the same direction. We know that connectivity is absolutely vital for our region. It will bring international businesses, it will bring jobs and opportunities to our community. I've been making the case that HS2 is a good thing. It's about not just connecting us with London, but it's about making a fast journey and connectivity to Sheffield, for example, but also about capacity on our rail network. But it is not an either or. We have to make the case to government that if you keep talking about levelling up, you have to understand that the transport network is broken in West Yorkshire. Our bus services is broken. If you, as the Member of Parliament for Towns and Villages, I know how hard it is to get across our region. So it is about Northern Powerhouse Rail, it's about getting an intercity stop in Bradford, it's about getting connectivity to Sheffield, and also making sure that our bus network works for people and not profit.
Matt, I think we've already heard the phrase 2 or 3 times about making the case to government. It is one of the problems that the Metro Mayor just doesn't have enough powers to be able to deliver real change.
No, I don't think so at all. I think actually what we've got is a £1 billion budget. There's more funding that's available to us to bid in for. There's a great opportunity to be ambitious, to be forward-thinking, and to innovate. I hear this argument about, here's what Manchester's done, let's replicate Manchester. Actually, we should be unique in this region. We should be standing up and be proud of what we deliver, and not say we want to duplicate, but we actually want to do something that's West Yorkshire based and connects West Yorkshire. And it can't just be about Leeds City Centre or Huddersfield City Centre, but it's got to be about Keighley and Cleckheaton. It's got to be about Batley and Brighouse and all communities being connected. That is the key. That's how we will improve productivity, and it's how we'll increase investment in our region.
Tracy, can the Mayor do a good job with the powers that they will have on May the 6th, or does it need more?
Well, certainly I see this devolution deal, and I've been a fan of devolution ever since becoming a Member of Parliament. I do see it as the floor and not the ceiling. There are different powers for different mayors across the country. Andy Burnham, for example, has health. This deal brings in the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner. Some mayors don't have that. So it is a bespoke deal. It is a different deal to others around the country. But I do think it is about standing together with mayors across the country, as well as people who know their community, who are living and working in their community, being a voice for their community, and standing shoulder to shoulder with Andy Burnham and Steve Rotherham and Dan Jarvis to also make the case to bring investment to our communities. But it's an ambitious deal, and the leaders did a good job getting it over the line, but we can definitely go further.
Matt, very briefly.
I'd say I'm very happy to work with Andy Burnham and other mayors, but I want to also make sure we're working with Ben Houchin and Andy Street and mayors across the country to argue for that deal, to make the whole voice of mayors across the UK stronger. It can't be party political. Actually, it has to be about what's best for West Yorkshire and what's best for business and what's best for our communities and best for our people.
If I could just squeeze one more question in on the transport section from Lisa Pryor. Even with any net reduction of flights nationally, surely our region has room for modest growth and modern facilities. So Tracy, first to you, will you be supporting the new terminal proposed for Leeds Bradford Airport?
Yes, I support the terminal. I think it's a good move because it is zero carbon building. It's better than the building that was there before. I think the aviation sector has suffered desperately during the last year or so, and I think it will take quite some time to come back to anything like it was before the pandemic over the next few years. And we've all seen, haven't we, that we can now communicate and attend meetings without necessarily having to get on a plane. I'm proud we have an airport because I think if we're open for business internationally, and if we want international students to come to our great universities, it's an important gateway, and that gateway should look good, it should be green, and it should be have proper transport to it that doesn't impact on the neighbours who live around the airport. And I know there is a controversial thoughts around the airport, and certainly those people who live under the flight paths, they need to be listened to and to be consulted, because the disruption for them and noise and so on should also be drawn into our conversations when we talk about the airport.
Matt, are you in favour?
I am. I back the decision from the local planning committee to have a new terminal. Actually, what we need is a zero carbon terminal with better public transport access that brings jobs and investment to our region. It is a symbol for our ambition and for our growth. But it was the Conservatives on Leeds City Council at committee who made sure that they put in the amendment that meant that the airport had to deliver its new terminal, had to deliver everything before they could get any new flights. And I'm not a fan of 24/7 flights coming from the airport. Actually, we need to hold them to account for that. And we need to do more with the airlines and with the airport too, and actually say to them, how can you reduce emissions? How can you look at e-flights and innovating technology and be ambitious and see this region as a place where actually air travel is moving on to the next step of air travel, where we're lower emissions, where we're actually making sure that e-flights are on the increase, and that we're still championing jobs growth in our environment.
Okay. Talking of jobs, let's move on to skills and education. Tracy, Helen Nelson's asked, many communities in West Yorkshire, often within walking distance of prosperous city centres, are held back by a lack of opportunities for children and young people. How will you address that?
Well, we've seen, haven't we, during the pandemic, that unemployment for young people and Black and Asian minority ethnic youngsters has risen exponentially, and we have an opportunity with devolution and with the Mayor's powers to try and address that, because it's vital that we upskill our community to be open for business. And we know that there's been a focus on people going into university education, which is great, but I do think adult education in particular has been the poor relation. And having spent time at Bradford College only this week, and having had conversations with Cllr College, I know that they have really been impacted financially by government decisions around funding during COVID. So my ambition is to set up a digital academy. We already have fantastic digital companies, tech companies, but we need to make sure that with the world of work changing, that the skills are there. And obviously all those people who may be in their 40s or 50s and are looking at unemployment, they need to be supported as well. And also business, because I've visited businesses where there's not even a card machine. It's really important to try and get that bricks and clicks with our businesses so that they understand the opportunities for learning whilst also running a business. And I think it's also, it does weave into my commitment to the green recovery. These are going to be green jobs. that we're looking to create, whether that's building batteries for cars, whether that's in retrofitting homes, the hydrogen economy. We need to make sure that we are ready to embrace our commitment to zero carbon. So my 1,000 jobs for young people in the green sector is something I'm hoping to roll out, but also we need those skills to be there for youngsters. And certainly as somebody who went to university later in life, I know the impact on your potential earning power. Retraining can be as you get older. Certainly it's great for women coming back into the world of work.
Matt, how would you address the challenges that face so many children and young people in West Yorkshire?
Well, I was in Gipton the other day at the old fire station there, and I had a conversation with some of the staff, and where they're based only 3 miles from Leeds city centre. But I'm talking about Leeds, this could be any of our cities. They're based only 3 miles from the city centre, but opportunity and the jobs in that city centre feel 1,000,000 miles away. Actually, we need to do far more at working with our communities, and that's why I believe opportunity areas are a way to succeed. I think what we can do is bring our universities, our employers, our further education institutions, our training colleges, everybody together around the table. We can make sure that we deliver an all-encompassing package. And we also need to be clear that university isn't for everybody. Actually, apprenticeships are a great way to develop careers, whether that's in the culture sector and the arts, whether it's in engineering and mechanics. We need to make sure that we're championing that and getting bang for our buck, using the apprenticeship levy, using the Kickstart scheme, getting government funding in, and doing things in our region that lead to careers. And I also want to make sure we have a gigabit connected region. I want to make sure that what we have is people that aren't left out in the cold from digital access, from being able to get on the internet use those skills and learn. And that could be for anybody at any stage of life. Third part is about brownfield regeneration and investing in our high streets. We need to make sure that brownfield sites come forward, not greenbelt sites. It's actually about improving our urban areas. It creates opportunities, it creates jobs, it's chances for new housing where we can look at shared ownership models. There's so much we can do by regenerating brownfield sites. So this race to build on the green belt, I'm afraid, just isn't going to work, and it won't work for me.
Okay. Touched on digital jobs, obviously, with the Digital Economy Academy, but a key part, and something that Mandy Ridyard wants to ask, is around digital poverty. So how do you intend to address that, Tracy?
Well, you're absolutely right. There's certainly during the pandemic hearing stories of families who are sharing the mum's mobile phone to do their homework and GCSEs. It's absolutely wrong, and that's why I think the Labour Council's response to get laptops and iPads out to those disadvantaged families is really important. But it's also about older people and loneliness and isolation, and making sure that we can give the skills and the training to all those people who are digitally isolated.
So how would you actually look to do that?
There is certainly within the Digital Academy, we are going to have a digital council that is going to be absolutely identifying that lack of joined up offer across the country. So whether that's work across West Yorkshire, so whether that's working with community centres, whether that's working with Age Concern, whether that's working with food banks, where you can identify people who need that support, because there is going to be a lot of people that are very far away from the jobs market, and they will need that support, and that is about getting trusted teachers in communities to help people onto that journey. And it's certainly something that the Mayor will have a budget for and will be able to support.
Matt, how would you look to reduce digital poverty?
Well, I think it's a great question, and actually if I look at what my nephew does in terms of digital access, it's a world away from the knowledge that I have, and we need to make sure that we are constantly adapting and constantly changing. I think there's an opportunity here with the Mayor's agenda to bring forward different age groups, to actually help each other to work, making sure that the young are educating the older, making sure that we are delivering schemes that bring people around the table, that are great for community relations, but help improve digital access. There's funding that can be available to do this, and we need to look at what businesses are doing and the best providers to do it too. Not redesign things and not reinvent the wheel, but see what's working and how we can champion it and how we can then push it further. And it's not always councils or the government or the combined authority that are the best to do that. Sometimes actually it's making sure that we work with community groups, that we work with valued institutions. They know their communities, they know the people that are hard to reach, and we need to make sure that their voices are heard and that they can get back to the combined authority and say, you need to be out here, you need to be working with this community, and there's a job to be done, let's get on and do it.
Okay. Holly Simpson on a different subject wants to ask, West Yorkshire has such a rich cultural heritage. What will you do to help our cultural assets, our museums, our galleries, and also our hospitality industry and tourism sector move on from the impact of the pandemic? And Matt, to you first.
Yep, I think I'm really keen to see a culture forum that the Mayor has and that is answerable to the Mayor and comes in and gets people around the table from all different sectors, all different parts of society, making sure that what they can do is they can say what's successful, what's needed, where the gaps are, not just the gaps in terms of which communities are missing out, but which geographies are missing out too. I think part of the challenge when you look at Leeds 2023 and Bradford 2025, which are great schemes, actually we need to make sure that it delivers for everybody. Alex, that is the hard part. I think people aren't bought in because they don't see it as something that will benefit them. Well, actually culture has a huge benefit, has a huge economic impact. And I want people to come forward as culture champions in their area, making sure that they are seeing, hey, this offer's available, let's take culture to people rather than people come into the city centre. I go back to my example of Gipton. If somebody's 3 miles away from the city centre, they're not going to come in to town to see a performance or to engage. Then what we need to do is make sure it goes out to them and culture goes to the community.
I think one of the challenges with Leeds 2023 and Bradford 2025 is that the culture, hospitality and tourism sector is focused on 2021, 2022 to see if they can still be here for 2023. Yeah. So what would you do, Matt, in your first 6-12 months to make sure these organisations can exist and then thrive? Well,
I think that part of that is firstly is I go back to the discretionary grants, making sure the discretionary grants are out there. 20 million that's sat in the account for Leeds. We need to get that out there, make sure that businesses have that certainty so they can invest. We need to make sure that we're listening and that we're adapting, making sure that we're taking on board what hospitality are saying. They have had a rough year. I've spoken to many landlords, many restaurant owners who say, actually, furlough's been great, we've had a chance to survive, but now we need to move on and we want to stand on our own 2 feet, but we want to know that we've got a mayor who's behind us and backing business. And that's exactly what I want to do, back business and make sure that they can succeed. And that means regenerating our high streets, investing in our high streets, making them places that people want to go and visit, and looking at our domestic tourism offer as well, and really shouting about it. Yorkshire's got a lot to offer, and West Yorkshire in particular has a lot to offer. So we need to make sure people are coming here and they're welcomed here, and everybody is an ambassador for West Yorkshire.
Okay. Tracy, what would you do to help our cultural assets?
Well, certainly, having been in the creative industries for 3 decades before I came into politics, and also been the Shadow Secretary of State for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, you won't be surprised to know that this is really important for me. And it's not just about jobs, because of course it's about jobs, or the creative industries. It's about well-being. And coming out of this pandemic, we're going to see a really a tsunami of poor well-being and mental health, and culture can really help that. And I think everyone should have access to culture, whether you live in a big city or a town or a village. You should have that access. So part of my manifesto, I'm committed to a film studio of the North. We're here in the magnificent production park. I'm a huge fan of this college, particularly at the Backstage Academy. Their pathway of young people going into brilliant careers is really a powerful statement about the opportunity that creativity and the arts can give our youngsters. And this is a former mining village, and how it's regenerated this community is to be really applauded. But it's also not just about creative industries. It's about spaces in our communities, so libraries, community centres, places where people can gather and share and enjoy an experience. And whether that's buskers on your high street or the Batley Poets, a richly diverse group of poets who meet in the local library, that's what culture means for me. Not necessarily the big shiny buildings that sometimes people don't feel that are for them. It's about building that community offer. And the Creative People and Places scheme that the Arts Council roll out across the country. There is one in North Kirklees that does fantastic engagement, a very high quality of cultural offer. So it's about jobs, opportunities, training, so many jobs that are not just about acting and directing in a very diverse sector. And I championed Channel 4 coming to Leeds. We've got Sky, Screen Yorkshire, all of their work that they do with young people, apprenticeships, training boot camps and so on. I will be an absolute advocate for that. And I know that internationally we can be the go-to place with our great locations and our brilliant skilled workforce. You know, we can really beat Pinewood hands down when it comes to an offer for Netflix.
Very briefly, when our cultural assets do get to open their doors again, which one are you going to go to first?
Well, maybe the Playhouse, or maybe just a gig. Just to hear live music would be such a thrill.
Matt?
Peace Hall in Halifax. Yeah, desperate to go, and I've not had chance, so I want to be there and have a good look around.
Sounds good. Let's move on to our third section, our communities and the environment. Question from Sharon Spoon. I'll come to you first, Matt. How will you tackle climate change in your first 18 months in office?
So I think it's about making sure that we have a plan for delivery, and that plan has got to include the Northern Forest and planting the Northern Forest and delivering it here in the region. I've been a Woodland Trust tree champion. I want to make sure we plant more trees, we create habitats, but on top of that we clean up our rivers. There's been great work that's been done in the Wharf and the Calder and in Ilkley about cleaning up our rivers and our waterways. We need to do more. We need to be at the forefront of that, and we need to be challenging Yorkshire Water, our councils and others to really step up and use the enforcement powers that are there. And I'm unashamed about saying that. We need to make sure that we're protecting the green belt. It's about brownfield land coming forward first. It's about regeneration and the jobs that come with that. But that protects our environment and our green spaces. And it's also about making sure that we use new technologies. So where we've got housing, we're looking at making sure that they are the best insulated homes, that actually they're homes that look at green energy generation, and really pushing house developers and builders and saying there's more we think that you can do. And that will involve some retrofitting. I think there's a role for the Mayor to do, and looking at not just new homes but our existing homes. Another part that I add is that we need to get tough on fly tipping, particularly as well. Everywhere I've gone, people have commented about fly tipping, and I don't think that we're doing enough on that, and I think that we need to be more rigorous. We need to be taking more enforcement action. It's become far too common for people to just dump waste. We've got some of the councils with some of the worst records for fly tipping in the country. Let's step up and do a bit more here and challenge ourselves as much as challenging each other.
Tracy, what's your plan, or what measures would you put in place to tackle climate change?
Well, certainly the climate change emergency is real, and I'm glad that the Labour councils have come together to commit to a target of zero carbon emissions by 2038. It's a really bold plan, and certainly we do need that roadmap to get us there. So for me, it is about making sure that everything that I do has a green impact. So whether that's transport, making sure that we have electric buses, EV buses. We've got 9 in Leeds. I want to get more made by Opta, keep it local. Whether that's about housing, I'm committed to building 5,000 affordable homes and social housing across the region, making sure that they're as green as they can be. The retrofitting programme that has not really delivered, the government abandoning their green homes grants and so on. We need clarity on that. We need to make sure that those that retrofitting happens. On skills in the green sector, on business, manufacturing task force, making sure that that is about the hydrogen economy and making sure we can set up places where batteries can be built, working with our brilliant, clever minds in our universities. It's about a direction of travel. And of course the Mayor will have hard powers and money to build defences against flooding. Now, we can't have a fair and just recovery from COVID if there are some communities that are suffering flooding every 2 years when it was supposed to be a once-in-a-generation experience. Hebden particularly has really suffered, and it's not fair. And I will be on my first week making a phone call to the Minister to ensure that West Yorkshire Mayor is round that table when they're talking about flooding, not just about South Yorkshire, but West Yorkshire as well, because water knows no boundaries. And working with great companies like Slow the Flow, which are working upstream to stop water cascading into our valleys and into people's homes and businesses. So there's a multitude of things we can do, but certainly that direction of travel, working with Labour leaders, I know we can deliver on our targets for zero carbon 2038.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I think Tracy's raised a good point about transport and looking at mass transit for our region and e-buses and what we can do. But I go back to the point on our green belt. I hear from Labour that they've got concrete plans for housing development. They want to concrete over the green belt, and that is what causes flooding. That is what I've stood in the living rooms of people in those 2015 floods who have, the flooding has come up to their waist. If their children hadn't have woken up at the right time, they could have drowned in that. And that is incredibly difficult. I've stood there with business owners who have lost everything in those floods and making sure we deliver flood preventions there. But it is about building houses in the right locations and challenging our councils on this and saying, you need to make sure that you are not building on floodplains, that we are protecting the green belt. Yes, we need new homes, but they need to be in the right places as well. So I just want to add to that.
Tracy?
If I may, just to say that the local plans are approved by government, and that certainly there are some communities across West Yorkshire that are really feeling the pressure of expectation from government to deliver the numbers of homes. We need to work with governments to not just to be told what to do, but to work with them to get the houses at the right place at the right price for the right community, and whether that's older people's bungalows, whether that's starter homes, whether that's homes for larger families. But as social housing, the building of social housing has plummeted because that's about political will. And certainly I will be making the case to government that we want to make sure that when the housing local plans are agreed, and we have to work with government and their numbers, that working with the housing associations and Homes England, that they are absolutely at the right price and in the right place.
Nope. So housing's a really good example of where climate change measures get difficult because there are things that people don't want to happen. The same is also true of cars and congestion. So, Matt, what would your plan be to cut congestion?
Well, we actually need to make sure that we are getting people out of their cars and making that choice to get on the bus, to get on the train, and giving different transport options to people. And the congestion charge that they've used in Manchester isn't the model to do that. It hits the lowest earners and those on fixed incomes hardest, and it doesn't change behaviours for others. Actually, what we need to do is make sure we've got proposals for a mass transit system to come forward that connects all of our region together, making sure we're taking account of business in that as well, where people need to go to work, to go to school, to get to health facilities. And it's about making sure that we have green options that are available. There will be occasions where we need to make sure that we're looking at realigning roads, we're looking at innovation and how we don't have people locked in traffic jams and doing more. At the moment, I'm driving around West Yorkshire all the time canvassing. I've been stuck in traffic jams in Brighouse because the roads are closed. What we need to do is get people moving and get the economy moving in the region. So deliver the mass transit system, new rail facilities, greener buses, new contract with the buses, and the new contract with the people on the buses as well. That's what we need to deliver.
Tracy, what would you do to address congestion?
Yeah, it's been really frustrating, hasn't it, that our communities are seemingly gridlocked, and we've seen from government very little support for our transport plans, and we need to certainly have money for transport for the north, giving with one hand, then pulling away again with the other. We need to have that financial support to have a really first-class transport system that gets people about at the right price and with a green agenda in mind. So certainly getting people out of petrol cars is really, really important. The Mayor has opportunities to roll out more electric vehicle charging points, but we've seen that the government have pulled back on their subsidies for electric vehicles, which is counterintuitive if you ask me, because actually they're quite expensive. Families can't necessarily afford a brand new electric vehicle, so we'll potentially go for one that is emitting and actually affecting the air quality. So we need to make sure that those companies that have fleet cars, that they are persuaded to have electric vehicles, because 60% of the second-hand car market come from fleet cars. But it's also about having opportunities to travel in different ways. That's why I want electric bikes rolled out across our cities to make sure that people have the chance to get around and make them also accessible for those with disability, so we have trikes and so on. It's also about having opportunities for walking, but fundamentally it is about investing in buses, green buses, and investing in our trains as well, because to be honest, if it's good enough for London, it's good enough for West Yorkshire.
Okay. Talk about investing, but in a different subject. Martin Patterson would like to know what measures you would put in place to increase the amount of affordable and social housing in our region. Tracy.
Well, as someone who grew up in a council flat, social housing is really important for me, because we had the security of our home and we could flourish. We have seen the building of social housing, the numbers absolutely fall off a cliff and plummet, and the numbers of houses built more generally across the country actually flatlining. So this is a great opportunity with West Yorkshire Mayoral deal to turbocharge that house building, and working with Homes England and housing associations who know their communities, and also cooperatives also who have great ideas about how people can share spaces. Having had a look around the Climate Innovation District in Leeds, that's also a great way that we can speed up housing delivery, because they're modular houses, they're built on site, so their transport doesn't impact on our environment, and they can go up one a week. This is really important, that we have a bold approach to housing, but also to make housing at the right place, at the right price, and it's bespoke for those people, because it isn't right, is it, that our young people can't get on the property ladder if they have a job, or that they're having to rent at extortionate costs. It's fundamental to who we are to have a safe and warm place to live.
Okay. Matt, what measures would you bring in?
I think there's a really good argument for more affordable homes being identified within our neighbourhood plans and within our local plans. Actually, I've spoken with many of the housing developers and the housing companies, and shared ownership models are something that's got great legs and can work. It's worked elsewhere in the country, and I think we need to be looking at that and pursuing more of that. It's about a different mix of homes as well. We've heard and seen far too often that 4 or 5 bedroom executive homes get built on sites. What we need are starter homes, flats, bungalows, different opportunities that are available. Not everybody wants to live in the same type of home. And on the back of that, it's a great opportunity for skills and innovation and bringing jobs to the region, getting housing right and in the right areas, and that improves and regenerates communities too. So there's a lot of work to do at making sure we have a mix of homes in our region, so that our places our communities are great places to live, work, to grow up and grow old.
Another aspect that helps our communities be great places to live is safety. Brian Curran and Valerie Smith would like to know what you'll do to reduce crime and get more bobbies on the beat. Matt.
Yeah, so I've said already many times, I want to see more police with using the extra powers with better equipment out on our streets. I want to make sure that they're visible so that you know where they are. I've championed justice reports. At the moment, what we have are crime reports so that people can see where crimes have taken place. But what people want to know is that justice has been doled out too. They want to know if a criminal's been caught, what's the sentence that they've been given. That increases confidence in our police. It increases confidence that people are being listened to and crimes are being taken into account. We need to make sure that we're tackling things like antisocial behaviour, like knife crime. There was an incident where a young man who was 19 was stabbed in Bradford. Young men carrying knives, and it is predominantly men who are carrying knives. We need to make sure that we end that. I'm afraid that we've failed if we've got kids who are carrying knives. We need to do far more working with communities, working with our community leaders and understanding just what's going on and why this is happening. But we need our police to be visible, and they need to make sure that they're on the streets, and you should know just what your bobby's doing, where they are, and be able to see them out and about.
Okay. Tracy, what would you do?
Well, we've seen, haven't we, that it's been an erosion of the police service over the last decade, 21,000 officers, as I mentioned, but also the closure of our courts, our magistrates' courts, county courts, 600 police stations closed across the country, and that impacts on communities' sense of safety. So in Dewsbury, losing the courts and the police station, you don't feel as safe as potentially you would do. So I'm committed to 750 more officers and staff, but that's not going to solve the problem of safety. We have to make sure that there is early intervention, and there is money in the mayoral deal for the Act Early Institute, and to put in place the support for young people. We have a government that has cut youth services across the country, and young people have nowhere to go and nothing to do, and so are vulnerable to getting drawn into crime. So it's making sure that the mayor and also the police and crime commissioner, there is funding there to support safer communities. So it takes the money which is from proceeds of crime and reinvest it in our communities to put in that early intervention work. And also, I think it's really vital, given what we've heard recently with the tragic murder of Sarah Everard, that we also have safe communities for women and girls. And that's not just out and about, that's of course in people's homes. Before the pandemic, 2 women a week were murdered by their partners or their exes. At the first lockdown in spring, that had tripled. We absolutely need to, and I will, support refuges, early intervention, perpetrator programs, the things that will make a difference in our communities to try and make West Yorkshire the safest place to be a woman and a girl. But if I could also mention as well that we need to make sure that the probation service works to stop people on that cycle of reoffending, and there is an opportunity bringing that service in-house and closer to home, that we can make sure that we want to get people back into their life, back on track, and to make sure that they don't reoffend. It's really important for our sense of well-being.
Thank you, Tracy.
Alex, I mean, the government's announced today that there are 495 new officers in the recruitment drive in West Yorkshire already. I think some of this work is underway so that we see visible police out and about in West Yorkshire. And it is about making sure that they're directed from the top and the buck stops with the mayor. And they say, actually, here's the plan. We want you to get out there and make sure you're getting out, making our communities safe. And it is about using things like ANPR and CCTV. It is about making sure our police have the equipment. I've talked about officers having tasers to make sure that they can tackle knife crime as well. Because what we've got is we've got a situation where officers and our emergency service workers are being assaulted and they're being attacked. And we need to make sure that the sentencing is right, and I'm very pleased that that sentencing has increased for those who assault our emergency service workers. But we need to make sure they've got the equipment and the training to do the job too.
Very briefly.
Yeah, very briefly, if I may. I'm not sure equipping our police officers with tasers is going to make people feel safer. And I'm not sure whether it's an operational decision that would need a conversation with the force themselves and whether that's being costed. Giving our police service the equipment they need is really important, but this idea of just arming them with tasers is not going to build trust and make our communities feel safer.
Okay, very briefly, Matt, finally.
There's been funding in place that West Yorkshire has already applied for to start some of this process. There's more funding that's available. What we need to do is make sure that the equipment's there, that officers feel that they've got the training, that if they need it, they can use it. This isn't about recklessly doing it. This is about making sure the equipment is there so they can keep communities and themselves safe.
Okay, we're out of time for questions, so I will now pass back to the candidates to each deliver their closing statements of 2 minutes or shorter, and we'll reverse the order from the opening statements. So let's go first, Matt.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody that's tuned in at home, and thank you to Production Park for hosting us and the young people and others who put this set together. It's amazing and just shows the sort of innovation, the drive and great business minds that we have in our region. There's more to do, and I want to deliver more of that with you. Now, the pandemic's hit our region very, very hard. I know that we're not broken, though, and actually we can make a success going forward. What we need to do is make sure that we listen to people like Dave in Pontefract, who talked to me about rejigging the way the combined authority works so that communities and towns are taken account of, not just city centres. The voices of others are heard. Sheila in Halifax, who talked to me about burglary and being worried if she was going to be burgled next because others have been burgled in our street. Andy in Leeds, who talked about the economy and making sure that we don't have new taxes coming in, that we don't have a congestion charge, so we can have vibrant places and vibrant city centres. And I want to make sure that we deliver all that. And this is about you. It is about you at home feeling that you've got the confidence in somebody who can take our region forward, who can make sure that they make the case and work with government to get things done, who can work with our councils to get things done, and has that experience and that drive and that ambition to see our region succeed. I live in our region, I've represented an area of our region, I've grown up in our region, and I want to make sure that I grow old in our region by having it as the best region for all age groups to live and work and grow up. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we deliver for our economy, we have decent local jobs, new apprenticeships, the Mayor's Business Board, opportunity areas. We make sure that we champion our startups and ensure that our communities can thrive. We need more police who are on the streets, tackling the people's priorities. And we need to make sure we have a transport system that works, that connects all communities, that's clean, green and on time. Looking at models like demand-led transport to make sure that we don't have people who are stuck out in the cold. There's lots to do and I'm keen to do it. So please vote Matt for Mayor on the 6th of May.
Thank you, Matt. Tracy.
Well, thank you so much for giving me this time to outline my plans, and honestly, thank you to the young people who created this brilliant set. I feel like I'm on Question Time or Mastermind or something. It's really great. So as a free school meal kid who grew up on a council estate in Batley, I was given all the opportunities to fulfill my potential: a secure home, a good education, a brilliant local library in Birstall, and the chance to go to university for free. Now, going back to the estate where my mum still lives, I don't think those young people have those same life chances. I really want to change that, to ensure that everybody has the chance to thrive and fulfill their potential. West Yorkshire is already a brilliant place to live and work. It can be even better. And I do think that for that to happen, we need the right leader. A leader with determination, drive, commitment and passion for our region. My experience of life, work and getting things done as a Member of Parliament in the region has given me the skills to make things happen, to look to the future with confidence and pride, to know that by working together we can tackle the climate emergency, sort out our transport challenges, provide jobs and skills, and also revitalise our local economies and do so much more. I'm also committed to being a different type of leader. I'll take a cooperative and compassionate approach to leadership, to get our voice heard on the national stage with the courage to stand tall to government as a loud, proud, clear and strong voice for our region. For our children, our grandparents and our future, as a region, we need a Labour Mayor. So please vote Tracy Brabin, May the 6th. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. That's all we've got time for, apart from a few final thank yous. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions and joined in the conversation online. Thanks to the team at Production Park. It's been fantastic to be here and deliver a live event. Thank you to the Northern Powerhouse Partnership for organising today's hustings, and most of all to the candidates, to Matt and Tracy, for participating so enthusiastically. Whoever is successful next week, we wish you all the very best. We hope that's been useful in informing your choice when you go to the polling booth next week. Don't forget to vote and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.